Greetings, sentients of all species. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the most anticipated spectacle of the galactic rotation. This is Clax Pinder, your humble servant of sensationalism, broadcasting live from the legendary Grand Nexus Arena on beautiful, bombastic Zorbulon 9. The seven-limbed announcer's voice boomed through speakers the size of small shuttlecraft, seeing his purple skin glistening under the 12 artificial suns suspended above the massive Colosseum. 80,000 spectators from 17 star systems roared in response, their various appendages waving merchandise and betting slips frantically. Today's main event is something special, folks. Something unprecedented. As part of our ongoing Inferior Species Showcase, we present to you a genuine, authentic, 100% certified specimen of humanity. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of hoots, clicks, and electromagnetic pulses that roughly translated to mocking laughter. Now, settle down. I know what you're thinking. Clax, you're thinking, humans are barely space-capable. Their bones aren't even reinforced with carbon nanotubes. Their skin tears if you look at it wrong, and you'd be right. Clax twirled dramatically on his four lower limbs, his upper three gesturing wildly at the holographic displays showing anatomical diagrams of humans. But this particular human has been causing quite the stir in the underground fighting circuits of the Orion Spur. The arena management has decided to put an end to those ridiculous rumors about human combat potential once and for all. One puny human female against 10 of our finest champions. The betting odds flashed across every screen and neural interface in the arena, 1,000 to 1 against the human. Gambling interfaces chimed as wagers poured in, the vast majority betting on a quick, messy human defeat. For those of you joining us from the more civilized sectors, let me explain how this works. Clax chortled, adjusting his iridescent announcer's sash. The human will face our champions in succession or simultaneously if they're feeling particularly suicidal. The current record for survival against multiple champions is 8 standard minutes, held by that remarkable Jovian gas whale last season. Remember that digestive explosion? Still cleaning the upper seating sections. The arena floor began to reconfigure itself, terrain shifting and morphing to create an environment of maximum entertainment value and minimum human survivability. The house is offering bonus payouts for especially creative kills. And for the 3 delusional entities who've actually bet on the human, Clax's primary speech orifice stretched into what passed for a grin among his species. Well, you'll be dining on premium nutrient paste for generations if by some cosmic miracle you're right. A thunderous countdown sequence began, the arena lights pulsing in sync. Place your final bets now, distinguished guests. The competition begins in precisely 60 seconds. A hush fell over the arena as the eastern entrance portal dilated. Spotlights converged on the lone figure who stepped through with an unhurried gait. And here she is, folks. The human specimen known as Alexis Lexi Thorne. Clax announced, his voice pitching higher with theatrical disdain. Don't adjust your visual receptors, yes, she is that small. Standing at just under 6 feet tall, the human woman appeared absurdly diminutive compared to the 20-foot minimum height of most sentient galactic species. Her dark brown skin glistened with a light sheen of sweat, and her black hair was pulled back in dozens of tight braids, each tipped with a small metallic bead. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit with reinforced panels at the joints. The crowd's initial silence shattered into raucous laughter. Several methane breathers in the upper decks expelled gas so forcefully in their mirth that they temporarily changed the arena's atmospheric composition. Look at those pathetic limbs. Clax zoomed the cameras in on Lexi's arms and legs. Only 4 appendages? And they don't even transform or detach. How does she expect to manipulate her environment with such limited equipment? And that skin. No scales, no chitin, no protective mucus layer. It's like watching a sentient water balloon enter combat. Lexi calmly surveyed the arena, seemingly unbothered by the mockery. Her eyes, a startling amber color, scanned the terrain methodically. The corner of her mouth twitched upward slightly. For those just joining our broadcast, allow me to remind you that humans evolved on a death world, though a rather boring one by galactic standards. Gravity only 1 g, oxygen atmosphere, liquid water everywhere. Practically a resort planet. Their only remarkable trait is their baffling ability to produce excessive quantities of specialized sweat, which they claim helps with thermal regulation. Fascinating. Not. Now the cameras panned to the western side of the arena, where a massive, ornate gateway began to open. And now, the moment you've all been quivering your sensory appendages for. Our 10 champions. The champions entered one by one, each to their own thunderous entrance music and light show. First, the triple-minded killing machines from the Draconid expanse, Esranix, and Esranix. 3 12-foot reptilians with obsidian scales and neural-linked consciousness slithered into view. Next, the quad-armed terror twins from Cortex Prime Blitz and Kratos. 2 bulky, gray-skinned bruisers with 4 muscular arms each stomped forward, their synchronized footfalls causing tremors. The atmospheric manipulator and crowd-favorite Gust the Suffocator. A swirling, vaguely humanoid cloud of intelligent gas pulsed with malevolent lightning. The living arsenal from the militarized moon of Proxian Weaponeer Max, cyborg with more gun than flesh, glided in on hover treads. The hive mind horror, the Thousand, a writhing mass of finger-sized parasitic worms that could form any shape they desired, undulated into position. The gravity tyrant Massivia the Crusher, a dense, compact being whose personal gravity field was strong enough to bend light slightly around her squat form. And finally, our reigning arena champion, the unstoppable, the unmovable, the unkillable Grok. A behemoth with stone-like skin, standing 30 feet tall, entered last to a deafening roar from the crowd. Lexi looked at her opponents, then at the weapons rack nearby. Her face betrayed nothing but mild interest, as if she were selecting produce at a market rather than tools for survival. Will someone please inform the human that she's supposed to look terrified? Clax quipped. Perhaps their facial muscles don't work correctly? Or maybe their tiny brains can't process the concept of imminent doom. The crowd roared again, but a few observant spectators had fallen silent, noticing something odd about the human's demeanor. She wasn't just calm. She looked eager. While our champions prepare their traditional pre-slaughter rituals, we have a special treat for you. Clax's voice cut through the crowd noise. Joining me in the commentary pod is none other than the mastermind behind today's event, Arena Manager Vox Bluntooth. Vox, thank you for gracing us with your presence. A hulking figure with blue-gray skin and a jaw adorned with actual metal teeth leaned toward the microphone. Bluntooth's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, an expression of pleasure among his species. Thank you, Clax. We've spared no expense for today's entertainment, Voxix rumbled, his voice like gravel in a food processor. Tell us, Vox, acquiring a human must have been quite the challenge. They're not exactly common in this sector. Vox's metal teeth clacked together in what passed for laughter. Not as difficult as you might think. We deployed a scout ship to their frontier colonies. This particular specimen was found competing in what they call mixed martial arts tournaments. Primitive stuff. We simply waited until she was alone, deployed a standard capture field. And here she is. She hardly even struggled, almost like she wanted to be brought here. The cameras cut to Lexi, who was doing simple stretching exercises in her holding area. A medical drone hovered nearby, scanning her repeatedly and seeming confused by the results. Our xenobiologists are baffled by her calmness, Vox continued. Most species exhibit elevated stress markers before combat. She's showing none. Perhaps humans lack the neural capacity for appropriate fear response. Our research indicates they're barely sentient. Clack swiveled one eye stalk toward the arena floor. It appears our medical drone is experiencing some sort of malfunction. It keeps recalibrating its scanners. Probably the human's bizarre biochemistry confusing the sensors, Vox dismissed with a wave of his tentacle. Now it's time for the highlight of our pre-show, the weapons selection ceremony. A massive cylindrical platform rose from the center of the arena, rotating slowly to display an arsenal of deadly implements from across the galaxy. Each champion approached the platform in turn, selecting their signature weapons. The Draconid triplets chose neural disruptors that could scramble a victim's motor control. The quad-armed twins selected gravity hammers that could shatter stone. Gus the Suffocator enhanced himself with atmospheric compressors. Weaponeer Max integrated several new guns directly into his cybernetic frame. The Thousand formed themselves into a living blade, while Massivia equipped gravitational amplifiers to her already devastating natural abilities. Grok, supremely confident, selected only a simple force shield. Finally, it was Lexi's turn. And now the human approaches the selection platform. Let's see what advanced weaponry she chooses in her futile bid for survival. Clax announced. The crowd fell into perplexed silence as Lexi bypassed the high-tech options completely. Instead, she selected a simple metal staff, a set of what appeared to be primitive throwing knives, and a small pouch of powdered substance. Is she serious? Clax sputtered. She's chosen sticks and dust against quantum weaponry. Box's 6 eyes blinked rapidly in confusion. Perhaps humans don't understand the concept of effective weaponry? Or she's attempting some form of symbolic protest before her demise? Lexi tested the balance of the staff, spinning it expertly between her hands before securing it to her back. She arranged the knives in various hidden locations on her person and attached the pouch to her belt. Commence the countdown sequence. Vox commanded, his confusion giving way to anticipation. Let the bloodshed begin. As the champions were transported to their starting positions, a small communication drone hovered near Lexi, likely to capture her final words for the audience's amusement. She looked directly into its lens and spoke for the first time, her voice surprisingly steady and clear. I hope you've all placed your bets. For our opening act, the human will face the triple-minded Draconid champions. Clax announced as the arena floor morphed into a rocky terrain with limited cover. Sranix, Esronix, and Esrenix share a neural link, allowing them to coordinate attacks with perfect precision. The human doesn't stand a chance against their hive-like tactics. The 3 reptilian warriors spread out in a classic pincer formation, their scaled bodies gleaming under the arena lights. Standing at 12 feet tall with powerful tails and razor-sharp claws, they towered over Lexi, who appeared absurdly small in comparison. The Drakonids are toying with their prey, Clax narrated excitedly, a common hunting tactic among their species. They'll likely draw this out for maximum entertainment value. Sranix, the largest of the 3, hissed something that the translation systems rendered as, "Which part of you should we eat first, soft thing? Your species is rare, your flesh might be a delicacy." Lexi remained silent, her stance relaxed but alert. The staff remained secured to her back, unused. Is the human frozen with fear? She's not even drawing her pathetic weapon. Clax's voice rose with anticipation. Perhaps she's accepted her inevitable demise. The Drakonids attacked simultaneously from 3 directions, their neural link allowing perfect synchronization. Sronix fired his neural disruptor, aiming directly at Lexi's central nervous system. What happened next caused a momentary system lag in the arena's high-speed cameras. Lexi dropped and rolled, moving with such unexpected speed that the neural blast passed harmlessly overhead. In the same fluid motion, she flung 2 of her small knives with precision that seemed impossible for such primitive weapons. The knives struck Serenix's neural disruptor, lodging in precisely the spot where the power coupling met the emission array. The weapon sparked and backfired, sending waves of disruption through the Draconid's own nervous system. What? How? Clax sputtered as Sesrenix collapsed in a twitching heap, temporarily paralyzed by his own weapon. That has to be luck. The remaining Drakonids hissed in rage, abandoning their coordinated approach for a direct assault. Sesronix charged from the left while Esserenix approached from the right, both activating secondary weapons vibro claws that could shred through battle armor. Lexi finally drew her staff, but instead of wielding it as a weapon, she planted it firmly in the ground and used it to vault 15 feet into the air, executing a perfect flip that the arena's artificial gravity should have made impossible. The human appears to be defying our gravity settings. Clax shouted in disbelief. Arena technicians, verify the environmental controls. Landing between the charging Drakonids, Lexi reached for the pouch at her belt, extracting a handful of the mysterious powder. As the Reptilians closed in, she blew the substance directly into their faces. What primitive tactic is this? Some kind of symbolic death ritual from her homeworld? Clax jeered. The effect was immediate and shocking. The Drakonids began to convulse violently, their respiratory orifices seizing shut. It appears to be some kind of chemical agent specifically targeting Draconid physiology. Clax's voice had lost its mocking tone, replaced by genuine shock. How could she possibly know their biological vulnerabilities? While the two champions struggled to breathe, Lexi retrieved her staff and struck with precision at specific points on their bodies. Each blow landed on what xenobiologists would recognize as nerve clusters unique to Draconid anatomy. She's targeting pressure points that shouldn't be known outside of Draconid medical circles. Clax was practically shrieking now. This is unprecedented. Within moments, all three champions lay immobilized on the arena floor. Not dead, but thoroughly incapacitated. Lexi stood among them, breathing only slightly harder than before, brushing dust from her jumpsuit with casual disdain. The arena had fallen completely silent. 80,000 spectators sat in stunned disbelief. This isn't. Clax struggled to find words, his professional demeanor cracking. The human has somehow defeated the Draconid triplets without sustaining a single injury. This cannot be happening. Lexi looked directly into the nearest camera drone and smiled, not the grin of someone relieved to have survived, but the confident smirk of a predator just warming up. In the luxury boxes, dozens of wealthy spectators were frantically trying to change their bets. Ladies, gentle beings, and unclassifiable consciousness matrices. Clax's voice had lost some of its bombastic confidence. After a brief, unexpected outcome in our opening bout, we continue with our next challenge. The arena floor reconfigured itself, the rocky terrain sinking away and being replaced by a series of elevated platforms connected by narrow bridges. Far below, a glowing blue substance bubbled ominously. Our human will now face the quad-armed terror twins from Cortex Prime Blitz and Kratos. These brothers have never been defeated in synchronized combat. Their four-armed fighting style has overwhelmed champions from 27 different species. The two massive gray-skinned warriors stomped onto the platforms, each wielding their gravity hammers. Their second and third pairs of arms clutched additional weapons, plasma whips, and kinetic shields. Their fourth arms remained free for grappling. The arena management has selected a particularly challenging environment for this round. Clax explained, his professional demeanor somewhat restored. Those platforms are unstable, and the substance below is molecular acid with a pH of -12. One splash, and you're reduced to your component atoms. Throughout the arena, spectators were frantically accessing betting interfaces. The odds against the human had dropped from 1,000 to 1 to a merely improbable 100 to 1. Money was pouring in as opinions shifted. Quite a few audience members appear to be hedging their bets. Clax noted with a nervous laugh. Remember, all proceeds from gambling losses fund our next season's lineup of even more spectacular events. Bluntooth's gravelly voice cut in. The arena management wishes to remind all sentients that the previous round was simply a fluke. Drakonids are notoriously susceptible to certain chemical agents. The Cortex twins have no such weaknesses. Lexi stepped onto the platforms, testing each one's stability with her foot before committing her weight. She seemed to be cataloging which platforms wobbled more than others. The human appears to be conducting some sort of primitive stability analysis, Clax commented. A futile effort when facing opponents who can control gravity itself. Blitz and Kratos separated, moving to opposite sides to trap Lexi between them. The crowd roared as they raised their hammers simultaneously. The classic Cortexian pincer strategy. They'll force the human to choose which death to face first. Clax had regained some of his enthusiastic mockery. Instead of retreating or preparing to defend, Lexi did something completely unexpected. She jumped forcefully onto the least stable platform, causing it to tilt wildly. Then she ran across it, her footfalls precisely timed to create a wave-like oscillation beneath her. What is she doing? Is this some kind of strange human suicide ritual? Clax's voice cracked in confusion. The wave effect traveled through the connected bridges, creating a chain reaction of destabilization. Blitz, caught mid-step during his approach, struggled to maintain balance on his suddenly undulating platform. Remarkable. The human is using resonant frequency manipulation to destabilize the entire arena structure. Clax shouted, abandoning any pretense of understanding what was happening. How could a primitive species possibly calculate complex vibrational physics in real time? Kratos, more cautious than his brother, activated his gravity hammer to anchor himself in place. The sudden gravitational shift created an even more chaotic pattern in the platform system. With balletic precision, Lexi navigated the wildly shifting terrain, making her way toward Blitz. The four-armed warrior swung wildly at her with his plasma whip, but the unpredictable platform movements threw off his aim. Lexi ducked under a whip strike and, in one fluid motion, severed the power coupling on Blitz's gravity hammer with one of her throwing knives. The weapon emitted a high-pitched whine as its containment field began to collapse. A catastrophic weapon failure imminent. Clax screamed, all professional decorum abandoned. Blitz needs to jettison that hammer immediately or he'll create a localized gravity well. Too late. The hammer imploded, creating a momentary but intense gravitational anomaly. Blitz was yanked violently downward, plunging into the acid below with a horrifying splash and a brief, bubbling scream. By the void. We've lost Blitz. This is unprecedented. Clax was practically hyperventilating. Arena Medical. Prepare resurrection protocols if sufficient molecular material remains. Kratos roared in rage, activating all his remaining weapons simultaneously. The platforms around him warped under the gravitational stress as he charged toward Lexi. Kratos has entered berserker mode. The death of a Cortexian twin often triggers a suicidal rage response in the survivor. Clax explained frantically. At least the human won't survive either. But Lexi had already anticipated this reaction. She reached into her pouch again, extracting not powder this time, but a small marble-like object. With perfect aim, she flicked it directly at Kratos' face. The object exploded in a blinding flash of light specifically calibrated to the Cortexian visual spectrum. Kratos stumbled blindly, all four arms flailing as he lost his footing. A targeted photonic disruptor? Where did she get that? Clax's voice had risen several octaves. That's not standard arena equipment. In his blindness, Kratos stepped too close to the edge. The platform tilted, and the massive warrior plummeted, joining his brother in molecular dissolution. Lexi calmly made her way back to the starting area, not a drop of acid on her. The shocked silence that followed was even deeper than after the first round. This is Clax seemed unable to form complete sentences. Arena control, please confirm what we just witnessed. Is the human actually prepared for each specific opponent? That's just not possible. In the VIP booths, several wealthy spectators had fainted. The betting systems were experiencing unprecedented volume as the odds shifted dramatically again. A frantic commotion erupted in the arena control booth. Technicians rushed around Vox Bluntooth, who was bellowing into multiple communication devices simultaneously. The camera drones captured his rage in high definition for the audience's viewing pleasure. What do you mean she knew exactly how to defeat them? Run a scan for implanted intel devices. Check for quantum entanglement communication. No primitive species could possibly. Clax cleared his throat awkwardly as he realized they were broadcasting Vox's meltdown. While arena management conducts some routine, competitive integrity checks, let's prepare for our third round. As per the standard progression, the human will now face protocol change. Vox's voice boomed through the arena speakers, cutting off Clax mid-sentence. By executive decision, all remaining champions will enter the arena simultaneously. The human has clearly benefited from some form of illicit advantage, and we will compensate accordingly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Such a blatant rule change was unprecedented in the Grand Nexus Arena's 3-century history. You heard it here first, folks. Clax attempted to spin the announcement positively. A special treat for our audience today. The remaining 6 champions will face the human together. Surely now we'll see this anomaly corrected. The arena floor transformed once again, this time into a complex labyrinth with varying terrain types: desert, swamp, rocky outcroppings, and metallic platforms. Holographic barriers shimmered at various points, creating unpredictable pathways. Our most challenging arena configuration, Clax announced. And look, the management has disabled the humans' access to the preparation area. No more mysterious powders or hidden devices. Indeed, the small utility belt and remaining throwing knives had been teleported away from Lexi, leaving her with only the metal staff. She stood in the center of the labyrinth, surrounded on all sides as the remaining champions were teleported to strategic positions around her. Gust the Suffocator hovered above, a sentient storm preparing to drain the oxygen from Lexi's vicinity. Weaponeer Max positioned himself on a high vantage point, his multiple gun arms primed and ready. The thousand formed into a wolf-like shape, ready to hunt through the labyrinth's corridors. Nasivia the Crusher activated her gravity amplifiers, bending the light around her squat form. And slightly apart from the others, the stone-skinned champion Grok watched with calculating eyes, his force shield humming with energy. The human finally appears concerned. Clax noted with obvious relief. Look at that expression. She's realizing her luck has run out. Lexi did indeed look different. Gone was the casual confidence she'd displayed earlier. She gripped her staff tightly, eyes darting between the approaching champions. For the first time, she looked trapped. Begin. Vox commanded, and all 5 champions attacked simultaneously. Gust created a swirling vortex, attempting to asphyxiate Lexi. Weaponeer Max unleashed a barrage of energy bolts from multiple weapons. The thousand surged forward in a wave of writhing parasites. Nasivia generated a crushing gravity well. Even Grok joined the initial assault, hurling chunks of the arena floor with devastating force. Overwhelming force. Clax shouted over the cacophony of weapons fire and gravitational distortion. The human cannot possibly what? In an instant, Lexi's demeanor changed completely. The worried expression vanished, replaced by a predatory grin. She twirled her staff with blinding speed, creating an improvised shield that somehow deflected energy bolts back at Weaponeer Max. 2 of his gun arms exploded from the feedback. That's impossible. Clax screeched. No material can reflect quantum phase disruptors. Lexi dropped and rolled beneath the gravity distortion, then planted her staff firmly in the ground. Using it as a pivot point, she swung her body in a circular motion, kicking up the arena sand in a perfect ring around her. Is she trying to create some kind of primitive barrier? How adorable. Clax mocked, but his voice lacked conviction. The sand cloud intercepted Gust's form, and immediately something unexpected happened. The microscopic particles bonded with the sentient gas, weighing it down and disrupting its cohesion. Gust's consciousness began to fragment as its gaseous body literally fell to the ground in clumps. She's weaponizing the arena materials themselves. Clax was beyond shocked now. She's displaying an understanding of xenobiology that should require decades of specialized study. Lexi wasn't finished. She retrieved her staff and drove it into a specific pattern on the ground, creating vibrations that traveled through the arena floor. The 1,000, who had been surging toward her, suddenly froze in place, the vibrations disrupting their hive mind communication. The human is demonstrating unprecedented adaptability. Clax was practically whimpering now. She's counter-engineering solutions in real time. Massivia charged forward, her gravity field intensifying. Objects around her crumpled like paper as the crushing force increased. Lexi stood her ground, waiting until the last possible moment before executing a flawless backflip onto a metal platform behind her. The platform, as it turned out, contained the arena's environmental control circuits. When Massivia's gravity field hit it, the system shorted out spectacularly. Electrical feedback surged through Massivia's gravity amplifiers, overwhelming their safeties. The champion imploded with a horrifying crunch, collapsing into a super-dense sphere the size of a marble. By the cosmic void, Clax had abandoned all pretense of professional commentary. She knew the layout of our environmental systems. That's classified arena information. This is sabotage. 4 champions down, the arena fell eerily silent. The only remaining sounds were Grok's heavy breathing and the soft footfalls of Lexi as she calmly walked toward the final champion, twirling her staff with casual expertise. She wasn't cornered, Clax whispered in dawning horror. She was herding them exactly where she wanted them. She was never at a disadvantage. The betting systems across the arena had crashed completely. The odds had shifted so dramatically that the computational models had failed. In the luxury boxes, wealthy spectators were desperately trying to contact their financial managers. The arena floor cleared of debris as the environmental systems reset themselves. 8 champions had fallen. Only Grok the Unstoppable remained, his massive stone-like form towering 30 feet above Lexi. His force shield hummed with energy, creating a barely visible bubble around his massive frame. And now, the ultimate test. Clax had switched to a whisper, as if afraid to break the tension. Our reigning champion, undefeated in 73 consecutive matches, faces the human. The crowd had fallen into a hushed silence. No one was laughing anymore. Grok deactivated his shield, a gesture that under normal circumstances would be seen as supreme confidence or suicidal arrogance. He stomped forward, causing tremors with each step, until he stood just 20 feet from Lexi. "You are not what you appear to be," Grok's voice rumbled, speaking in perfect galactic standard rather than requiring translation. "Who sent you? Which faction do you represent?" Lexi twirled her staff casually, her expression neutral. "No faction. Just me." "Impossible." Grok's volcanic temper flared. "No single being possesses knowledge of so many species' weaknesses. You've been engineered for this purpose." Clax, sensing a revelation, directed all camera drones to zoom in on the confrontation. "Is this a confession? Has the human been modified?" Lexi laughed, a surprisingly musical sound that echoed across the now silent arena. "No modifications, just observation. I've been competing in underground fighting circuits across 17 systems for the past 3 years. You think you were studying me? I was studying you." The implications hit Clax like a gravitational wave. "Wait, are you saying you allowed yourself to be captured? That this was deliberate?" "Your recruitment scout was so obvious," Lexi replied with a shrug, hanging around the outskirts of the tournament, asking questions about the remarkably adaptable human fighter. "I figured this was my best chance to access the Grand Nexus Arena. The prize money here is substantial." Grok's eyes narrowed to glowing slits. You think you can defeat me with your trickery? I am Grok. I have crushed worlds. Actually, Lexi said, her voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow carried throughout the arena, I've been looking forward to fighting you specifically. Your species has a fascinating biochemical response to adrenaline overload. Did you know that? For the first time, Grok showed a flicker of uncertainty. How could you possibly? Lexi began to circle the massive champion, continuing as if giving a lecture. Your race evolved on a high-gravity world with minimal atmospheric oxygen. Your respiratory system compensates with fascinating efficiency, but it creates a vulnerability. When your combat responses trigger, your body produces 3 times the normal adrenaline equivalent to compensate for your mass. Sustained at high levels, it causes microfractures in your stone-like exoskeleton. Silence. Grok roared, charging forward with earth-shaking force. Lexi didn't attempt to dodge. Instead, she planted her staff and vaulted directly toward Grok's face, a seemingly suicidal move. At the last possible moment, she twisted in midair, landing on his massive shoulder. Before he could react, she had jabbed her finger into a specific point at the base of his cranial ridge. Pressure point G37, she announced to the stunned audience. The nexus of the primary and secondary nervous systems in his species. Stimulation causes involuntary release of epinephrine-equivalent hormones. Grok roared again, more in confusion than pain, and tried to swat her away. But his movements were becoming jerky, uncoordinated. Lexi nimbly leaped to his other shoulder, repeating the process on the opposite side. The human is conducting some sort of bizarre neurological attack. Clax's voice had returned to full volume out of sheer disbelief. This should be anatomically impossible. Only the most advanced xenobiologists even know these pressure points exist. Grok's stone-like skin began to show hairline fractures, spreading like a web across his massive frame. His movements became increasingly frantic as he tried and failed to capture the nimble human darting across his body, targeting specific points with surgical precision. When I was captured, your medical drone scanned me thoroughly, Lexi explained loudly enough for the cameras to pick up. It was transmitting detailed anatomical data about humans to your systems. Did you think the connection was only going one way? I downloaded your entire xenobiology database while it was scanning me. Security breach? Vox bellowed from the control booth. Shut down all systems. But it was too late. Grok was literally beginning to crumble, pieces of his exoskeleton flaking away as the adrenaline surge caused catastrophic structural failure throughout his body. He dropped to one knee, then collapsed entirely, a mountain of living stone reduced to a heap of rubble. Lexi stood atop the fallen champion, barely winded. She looked directly into the nearest camera drone and spoke clearly, humans aren't special because we're stronger or faster or tougher. We're special because we adapt, we learn, we improvise, and we never, ever underestimate our opponents. The silence that followed was absolute. 80,000 spectators sat in stunned disbelief as the diminutive human, armed with nothing but a metal staff and her wits, he had systematically dismantled the 10 most fearsome warriors in the galaxy. Clax's voice, when it finally returned, was barely a whisper. Ladies, gentle beings, and consciousness matrices, we have a new champion. The Grand Nexus Arena remained in stunned silence as maintenance drones scurried across the battlefield, collecting the remnants of the most one-sided slaughter in the establishment's history. Only this time, it wasn't the expected victim who stood triumphant. Lexi sat calmly on a chunk of debris that had once been part of Grok's chest. She dabbed at a small cut on her forehead, the only injury she had sustained throughout the entire ordeal. The medical drones hovered nearby, confused by their programming directive to attend to the victor when the victor barely needed attending to. In the luxury boxes, chaos reigned. The wealthiest beings in the sector were having collective financial meltdowns as their accounting AIs calculated the catastrophic losses. Only 3 spectators had bet on the human and mysterious Arcturian mystic, a malfunctioning gambling algorithm, and a janitor who had placed a bet for the humor value. These three were now wealthy beyond comprehension. Arena financial systems are reporting a 97% depletion of all reserves, a pale-faced assistant whispered to Vox Bluntooth, whose metal teeth were grinding together so violently they were throwing sparks. The insurance underwriters are declaring this an act of war and refusing to cover the losses. Clax Pinder, his career hanging in the balance, floated down to the arena floor on his announcer's platform. His usual bombastic enthusiasm had been replaced by a shell-shocked professionalism as he approached the human champion. "Ladies, gentle beings, and consciousness matrices," he began, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, "we have with us the unexpected victor of today's event, a representative of humanity who has defied all expectations." The camera drone zoomed in on Lexi, who looked remarkably relaxed for someone who had just systematically dismantled 10 of the galaxy's deadliest warriors. "Tell us," Clax continued, clearly struggling to maintain his composure, "was this outcome truly a surprise to you? Or was it planned?" Lexi smiled, her amber eyes gleaming with barely suppressed amusement. "The outcome was inevitable. You all made the same mistake. You studied humans as specimens rather than opponents. You collected data but missed understanding." "And what understanding would that be?" Clax asked, his professional curiosity momentarily overriding his shock. "Humans aren't just another species playing the same game as everyone else," Lexi explained, her voice carrying easily through the silent arena. "We're the species that changes the rules when we're losing. We're the species that turns disadvantages into weapons. We're the species that deliberately enters games rigged against us because we enjoy the challenge." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Several spectators were frantically accessing data terminals, querying information about human history and psychology. "That seems like a rather inefficient survival strategy," Clax commented weakly. Lexi laughed. "It's kept us alive on a planet that tried to kill us every day of our evolution. We're not stronger, faster, or tougher than the other apex predators on our world. We survived because we refused to accept limitations. We looked at problems that should have been impossible and solved them anyway." She stood up, casually twirling her staff before securing it to her back. "Oh, and about the prize money, I'll take it in universal credits, transferred to this account." She flicked a data chip toward Clax, who fumbled but managed to catch it. "Of course," Clax mumbled. Management will process your winnings promptly." Lexi nodded, then turned to face the nearest broadcast drone directly. "I have a message for anyone watching this transmission across the galaxy. Humanity is entering the galactic stage now. Some of you will welcome us, some will fear us, some will try to exploit us. But remember what you saw today. Remember what happened when you put one human in a cage and expected submission." Her voice dropped to an almost conversational tone that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "We don't start fights, but we do finish them. And we really don't appreciate being underestimated." With that, she turned and walked toward the exit portal, her unhurried gait exactly the same as when she had entered. The silence followed her like a physical presence. "Will you be competing in future events?" Clax called after her, a desperate attempt to salvage some semblance of normality. Lexi paused at the threshold and looked back over her shoulder with a smirk. "I don't think your insurance would cover it." As the exit portal dilated closed behind her, the Grand Nexus Arena erupted into frenzied conversation. Representatives from 17 species were already transmitting urgent messages to their homeworlds. Weapons manufacturers were downloading combat footage for analysis. Intelligence agencies were initiating new threat assessments. And somewhere in the bowels of the arena, a maintenance worker was heard to mutter what would soon become a common phrase throughout the galaxy. "Never bet against a human."